about to make Penny do art, so pray for me. Hey guys, welcome to a new vlog from me. There's no real theme to the vlog this week. We are just reading. This is a reading vlog after all, and that's what we're going to be doing. Let's look at the weekly TBR every morning, or at least I try to start with a short story, essay collection, poetry collection, any kind of anthology. But right now we are in a short story collection. This is Out There by Kate Folk. This is speculative, struggle kind of saying that word, and I am loving it. I am liking it. It says, a present and wildly imaginative Out There depicts an uncanny landscape that holds a mirror to our subconscious fears and desires. Each story beats with its own fierce heart. Together, they herald an exciting new arrival in the tradition of speculative literary fiction. And that's what I'm about to get into after I film this clip. Now, the book that is the main focus of this vlog is The Sisters, the Saga of the Mitford Family by Mary S. Lovell. Nonfiction has pretty self-explanatory titles, but I do really like how this book is described. So this is the story of a close, loving family splintered by the violent ideologies, another word I can't say, of Europe between the world wars. Jessica was a communist, Depot became the Duchess of Devonshire, Nancy was one of the best-selling novelists of her day, beautiful Diana married the fascist leader Sir Oswald Mosley, and Unity, a close friend of Hitler, shot herself in the head when England and Germany declared war. So yes, these women, they're certainly characters. If you are somebody who likes gossip, this one's for you. And gossip about like rich people, yeah. Reality TV fans, you might get a kick out of that nonfiction. Now, my mood read is The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. This is about a woman who is a real historical figure. Her name was Martha Ballard. She was a midwife. There's several cases that are kind of going on in this story, but I'm assuming they are to each other. They're all going to connect to each other. That's how you say it. This is taking place in the 1700s in Maine. It tended to a woman who had just been raped. And obviously there's a trial about that because it was a very prominent man who did this to her. And then we go a few months later, and Martha's son and a few of his friends, they are doing business, taking some stuff down the river, transporting goods. And when one of the men falls off their boat, and they come across a dead body frozen in the ice, and we are going into how that is all connected to the rape case. Lastly, we have my ebook pick, A God in Ruins by Kate Atkinson. Again, this is just following how tumultuous it was in Britain in the, 20th century. It's chaotic. And this series, this duology, really focuses on how the choices we make in life, the impact that even the smallest choices can have, and those are all the books that I plan on reading this week. It is time for the nightly update on The Sisters. Today was pretty much World War II. But I'm thinking of books that prepared me for this book. The one I'm really thinking of is Age of Eternity, and really that series of just how the world was at this time. If you like Ken Follett, maybe give this one a go. Also, I would love for Taylor Jenkins Reid to write a book about one of these women, or multiple of them, whatever she would like to do. This, again, if you like Taylor Jenkins Reid, the gossip, rich, famous, this is connected with politics as well. I think that could be a really intriguing story, but let's see. I read 80 pages. Don't know if I said that. The first note probably fell out because the sticky tab was not that great, but oh, there it is. This was just relatable. But think how nice it would be to have as many dear dogs and things as one likes without anyone saying they must get off the furniture. That's what Debo said. My one for that chapter, chapter 14, was Nazism and fascism, which Debo's not related to either, will F a person up. They will mess a person up, and the relationships. Crazy, I know. Now, my next tab is something that I actually didn't know about and I found fascinating. This is in chapter 15, page 347 if you're in the paperback. On Pearl Harbor, or when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they also launched assaults on the Philippines, Malaya, and Hong Kong. I thought just America got hit. I didn't know all these other places got hit. So in the following days, Britain and the USA declared war on Japan. So I didn't know that's what got Britain to declare war on Japan. I didn't even know Britain declared war on Japan, if I'm being rightfully honest with y'all. But I'm assuming, well, I know Hong Kong and maybe Malaya, which is Malaysia, might have been colonized by the British. I'm not sure on that though. That's my thinking of why Britain would declare war on Japan. And then 3 days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the USA. I'm assuming it's because they were allied with Britain in this Japanese stuff. But I did not know that's how all of that went down, how war was declared on all these different countries. We also had Churchill delivering a speech to Congress. This is on page 348. And he said, "I cannot help reflecting that if my father had been American and my mother British instead of the other way round, I might have got here on my own." A footnote, through his mother, Churchill could trace unbroken descent through 5 generations from a lieutenant who served in George Washington's army. Now, I knew that his mother had been American, but I'm intrigued now. I kind of want to do some research on that, look at Churchill's family tree. I think that could be kind of fun to see this American family, again, who served George Washington. His descendant ends up being Prime Minister of Britain, which, if you don't know, George Washington was at war with the British. I just think that's kind of a fun historical fact. And last note of the day is in chapter 15, again on page 355. In September 1942, Nancy met Gaston Paluski, and for her, life began. This writer is a romantic. Just the way some of these sentences are worded and everything. Mary S. Lovell, I think she's a romantic, and I appreciate that because, like, we love romantics, we love dreamers. I love those kinds of people. I do like just how she words some things. I'm not a huge fan of the writing style. I think I'm going to give the writing a 2 just because of the descriptiveness. I think it's overwritten and very descriptive, and with nonfiction, I really don't need that. It's something I've been noticing recently in nonfiction where I'm like, we get it. You don't need to try to make it flowery. But I do understand some people like that because reading is subjective. But that is all in the Sisters for... Hey guys, happy Tuesday. I hope it's going well for you. That's my phone saying I need to put it on Do Not Disturb to do my reading update. I got to 86% in the Sisters. I read 72 pages. We are going to go over my thoughts. I feel like there wasn't that many notes that I took today. We are on day 6 of reading this book. I thought it would take me about 10 days to read, but it looks like it's only going to take me a week. But what we're getting a lot of today is after the war, starting out in chapter 17. We go from 1944 to 1947. We're seeing the aftershocks of the war and the division that it causes family, of how they all have gone their separate ways and aren't that connected unit anymore that they were in childhood. That's depressing. It's sad to just read of when we look early at this book, when the couple, the parents, David and Sydney, got together, the love they had for each other, and then just these happy summers and childhood that these siblings shared together, and all of that has just exploded because of World War II and the different ideologies, the different ideas that people had during that time period in history. It was very tumultuous. Yes, I stick to saying words I don't know how to say. This one I just found relatable. This quote's on page 420 in chapter 18. And it is about Derek, who is married to Pam. His intellect was only just short of genius, yet he would happily revise complicated travel plans to avoid hurting the feelings of his beloved dachshunds. Yes, I can relate so much. Dachshunds are bossy little people. I know. And then I thought this line was funny on page 423. We have Nancy visiting Pam, or no. It's just talking about when they would see the sisters who didn't have children, when they would like visit their nieces and nephews. So these are Debo's kids she's talking about. When she visited them in September 1946, when Stoker was 2.5, she said to him, "Can you talk?" And he answered, "Not yet." I just thought that was cute. Then we get into chapter 19, and we are seeing Decca's life in the United States. She's married an American man, and she's the sister that is a communist. And if you don't know, after the war, we go into the Cold War, and that's really America versus USSR going against each other. There were basically witch hunts for communists in the United States, and I'm sure it was probably well, I'm not going to say I'm sure, because there is a huge difference of how communism was viewed in the United States versus how it was viewed in England. This chapter is called Return to the Old Country because Decca does take her husband and one of her older children over to England. Just the Communist Party was so different there versus how it was viewed in the United States. For example, in 1950, she and Bob had intended to visit England, but were denied passports owing to their membership of the Communist Party. And that's just so crazy to think about. Just because of a political party that you're a part of, you can't get a passport, you can't travel. That is so scary to think about, because I have heard on the news and stuff of people in Washington wanting to take privileges of travel away to people who support Palestine, and those kind of situations. Now seeing this, I'm like, oh, I guess that really isn't too far out there, because it has happened before. And we know history's a will, it repeats itself, but we have all this knowledge and we should be able to prevent it, so hopefully we can. How one of Decca's children died. So 10-year-old Nicholas had a paper round delivering the Oakland Tribune after school. I've never heard of a newspaper coming after school, but okay. On the afternoon of Thursday, the 15th of February, 1955, while riding his bicycle home, he was hit by a bus and killed. That was I was shocked. I was not expecting that in the slightest. Making sure I didn't skip a tab. Okay, that was the Dachshund one, because some of these tabs are really light in color. So these tabs that I got on the TikTok shop. So some of these, they might look really pigmented on here, but then when you get them onto the actual page, they're very light. So don't know if I recommend these. I mean, I didn't miss any of them, I'm telling you, so they're getting the job done, I guess. But that is my update for the sisters today. Hey guys, I completed The Frozen River. We are about to do some call-out. Also marked on my A Year in Pixels that I completed a book today, and then on my genre tracker I marked that I finished a historical fiction. So now we have to go to this lovely section of where it's kind of like a little wrap up on my reading experience for said book. As I said, we are going to be doing Call Pal, a case where I actually have no idea where this is gonna go. Let me grab my notes. This is such a full little thing of notes. This is typically a little longer than my typical mood read. That is part of the reason why I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be taking notes on this and I should be taking notes in my actual notebook. We'll just have to see what I do in the future. Learning curve, you know, they're fun. But with the character work, I honestly think I'm going to give it a 2-star, because Martha had like a superiority complex where she seemed to be better than everybody except like her own family and maybe like a handful of other random citizens in the town. She really looked down upon other women, and it really reads like Martha is a modern day woman from 2025 injected into the 1780s, 1790s, when this book is taking place, when all the other women seem to be women of their time, and therefore Martha is looking down on those women because they're not as, in her mind, strong and independent as she is. And let me tell you, in historical fiction, you're always going to get those strong, independent women, because those are the kind of women that get into trouble. I think we can even say in modern day that happens, and it's not a bad thing. But when you don't really have any redeeming traits, which I don't want to say she doesn't have redeeming traits, because obviously she's a great medical professional, does a good job at taking care of her clients, that I can kind of say, maybe, depends. She might hold some prejudice against you. And I just didn't like how that character work was handled, just of how she looked down upon others. That really bothered me. The judgment, the haughtiness that she had, that kind of vibe to her. I didn't like that, but I do think this is kind of a memorable cast of characters, so that's why I'm not giving it a 1 star. So we're gonna give character work a 3. Atmosphere, we're going to do a 4. It was really good. The nature and coldness and grittiness of this historical time period of this is a really rough place to live in the wintertime. This is taking place in Maine. And again, before we have heaters, sure, they have fires and a I don't know, they have a furnace. That I think that came from the sisters, but they didn't have a whole lot. And staying warm was being up close to your guy, or having a nice quilt over you. It wasn't really a hospitable nature. And as we're seeing these crimes take place and how that really divides the community, I really love putting those two together of how the community was much like the nature around it, that there's still beauty to be seen. And our character is a midwife, and I think that that is such a beautiful career for somebody to go down. Also, there was something that I meant to say with the character work. We had these diary entries because this is inspired, in the author's notes it's inspired, not based on history. But Martha Ballard did have the author even has a hard time calling it a journal. It was just a day book saying, you know, what happened in the day. For Martha, she kept that for a long time of her life, like when she got married all the way up until a few days before she passed away. So in the book, she makes it a big point to ask her patients, like knowing their name, knowing their baby's name, knowing their first name. There's one scene when she's going to this one birth and she is asking the patient, she's like, what's your name? So she says, I'm Mrs. So-and-so. She says the husband's, surname. And Martha's like, no, your name, your Christian name. What's your first name? And so she says it. And then it's just like a big emphasis that with Dr. Page, Martha tells him, she's like, you need to know the name of your patients. That's the most important thing. But when we get the journal entries, even in the book itself, it's saying like Mrs. whoever. It doesn't say the actual name. So I just think that's a bit of like hypocritical nature, because the author did change the diary entries just to make it easier for a modern day audience to read. Because as I said, this is in the 1700s. Some of the English is different than the English we have today of just spelling, and there might have been spelling errors in the original. So she made it easier. So I don't understand why that change wasn't made. I think that's interesting. The writing, I'm going to give a 3-star because there were some really beautiful, very beautiful, like there was beautiful prose where I was taking pictures. I put them on the Pinterest board. So if you guys want to go check that out, check out my Pinterest. Very beautiful pieces of writing, but at the same time, I think this was overwritten. This just went on for so long, and I think kind of leaning into the plot, there is a whole lot going on that I think too much was going on. Like, what is our main plot point of this story here? There was just so much going on. So we are going into the plot, and I think I'm going to give the plot a 3 as well, because I do overall think this is a good story, but there was a lot of directions where this was going, and sure, they did all connect, and I do think everything did wrap together nicely at the end of the book. The murder mystery, the man who they pulled out of a river, the rape case. We have Martha doing her job and having this rivalry with Dr. Page, which I really did not like that plot line. Don't like rivalry stuff. That bothers me. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking of heated rivalry. I have not seen that, by the way, and I don't plan to see it, but when I say rivalry, that's what I think of. You have all these plot lines going on, and I feel like it could just get a little distracting at times having all of that going on. So for intrigue, I'm gonna tell y'all, I predicted who the killer was. Let's see, how early did I predict this? I predicted it in the second quarter of the book is when I predicted who the killer was. I feel satisfied with predicting it, but at the same time, it's just like, wow, I really unraveled the mystery here. Like, how did I do that? I don't know how I did that. So with the intrigue, we're going to give it a 3. With logic, because as I said, I do think everything wrapped together nicely, but there was that downfall of some of the things where I don't think it made sense with how this character was just so much of a modern woman and nobody else was. And then as I said, with the diary entries, I just think that is kind of confusing, I would say would be a word to describe that. So I think we're gonna do a 3 as well. And then with enjoyment, we are going to do a 3. And now we are going to do the math to see how this ends up. This is getting a straight up 3-star, which is definitely like the vibe that I was getting. So this is one that I would recommend with a maybe, because I do think there is an audience for this, especially if you're somebody who maybe is interested in Outlander but don't want to dip your toes into a, what is it? Is it going to be like a 10-book series and then you have your side quest series? So if you are wanting kind of the vibes of Outlander, but as I said, not wanting to commit to a full book series, I think this would be good for you. I also think for fans of Kristen Hanna, the writing style reminds me of Kristen Hanna. I also compared this to Be Held by Tara Shea Nesbitt for the setting. Also with atmosphere, I can think of Northwoods by Daniel Mason, because we are in that book goes a lot of time places, but we are in New England. So I do think there is an audience for this book, and I do think it's a good book. It's just not a new favorite. I didn't absolutely love it. And those are my thoughts on The Frozen River by Ariel. Guys, happy Wednesday. I don't know what that curl over there is doing. I didn't get to read an out there this morning. I had a headache, not a migraine, but I realized that I hadn't had caffeine for like 2 days. I don't know how that happened. I was just drinking tea and water. I paid for it, but I have had caffeine since and more water. But so I feel better now. But I did finish The Sisters, the saga, The Mitford Family by Mary S. Lovell. So we are going to go through my thoughts with my kind of call pal that I took from what is called the Fable app. Also, since this book is very British, it's kind of fun that I was using my bookmark that I got at Westminster Abbey. Fun. The first little tab that I do when doing this system for rating nonfiction is impact. What impact did this have on me? And I honestly believe it was a 4-star for impact, because this did like inspire me to go research some things that I haven't looked into in a while, a nonfiction take on one of my favorite subjects, that being the 20th century and in Britain for the most part. And from the fiction books that I read, it's usually about everyday normal people, but this we're seeing from nobility, from these women that were in the social columns, gossip, all of that. So it was really just getting a new take on all of that, and I'm so thankful that even though the Mozart Code, that book wasn't a hit for me, but I learned from that book of what was going on in Europe at this time, and then from the Ken Follett books that I've read, that also had an impact on having that prior knowledge going into this. Now research, I have to give a 5-star, because this is a straight up facts. The author is not putting her own opinions in here, and I love that, because I think with these very infamous figures that it can be hard to not leave your own opinion, especially if you don't agree with their beliefs, but just putting all the facts out there and letting the reader decipher that themselves. And let me tell you, all the sources in the back, this is the sources right here. You see that? It's just going on and on and on. So the author did do a ton of research, talking to 2 of the sisters themselves, and then talking to family members, going into actual newspapers and books, all of that kind of stuff. So I do love that this wasn't based on opinion, that we are seeing this just as straight up facts. I think that is really important and can just really builds onto this, because all these sisters were such characters. I do think by the end that Decca was my favorite. That's Decca right up there. Really, all of these could have their own like TV show or their own book, because they're just all, it's so impressive the lives that they lived. With one of the last lines of the book, it says, "It is clear that much of their attitude to life was engendered by their mother, who allowed them freedom to develop while always being there to support in moments of crisis." And I think that's important, even if maybe they go down daunting paths of hanging out with dictators. It's like you F around and find out. That sounds so bad saying about this book about English high society, but the mother, Sydney, just let them learn from life. And even if things didn't go perfectly well, she was always there to support them. And I love that. I think that's how people should parent. Structure. I'm gonna say a 4 because I didn't absolutely love it. It wasn't like my favorite kind of structure style because I would kind of get confused at times, being like, okay, where are we? Who are we talking about now? That did get kind of confusing, and especially during the like post-war years, like right after the war, I was getting confused. So I did get confused at times. Now the writing style, I do have to give a 2. Do I want to bump that up to a 3? We're gonna do a 2 because I did skim. I wait till the 25% mark to start skimming because this was so descriptive. I showed y'all like the first paragraph in the book of all the adjectives and adverbs that were being used. It was way too much for me. That it's very overwritten. I don't think we needed all of the details and descriptions that the author gave us, and that this is already over 500 pages. That probably added like 30 pages to it. Like this probably could have been shorter. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, but there is such a romantic tone to the writer that I think really goes into who the sisters really were as people. I think a lot of them were hopeless romantics, but just being dreamers and trying to find the right way to live their lives. So we are going to do the math. This will be getting a 3.75. So yes, I would recommend that you guys pick up The Sisters, the saga of the Mitford family. And even if you know nothing about them, I knew very little. I read one of Nancy's books, the biography that she did on Louis the Sun King of France. I read that, and that's really all I knew of the Mitfords. So you can go into this blind, not knowing anything about them, and you're gonna leave this knowing everything about them. I highly recommend that you guys pick up The Sisters. I have finished my TBR, and then last night y'all saw that I finished my mood read. So what is my reading looking like the rest of the month? So since I finished my TBR, my mood read is going to be my main focus. Now it is a relatively short book and can be seen as a graphic novel. So I do not think this book will take me too long to complete. I will be following along with the audiobook, which is only about 3.5 hours in length, and y'all know I listen at double that. Well, like half that, I guess. What happens when I finish this, I'll just focus on my ebook read. But what am I starting next? What am I starting in 10 minutes here? That is the Dork Diaries, Tales from a Not So Fabulous Life, and this is the super squee edition. The Dork Diaries, this was my favorite book series before I read The Hunger Games, before I got into YA. I think this was listed as children's. I would say, it says ages 9 to 13. I would personally say that's middle grade in my mind, but obviously parents and the people who are the publishers, they know better than I do. But this was my like favorite series. So new school, new mean girl, new crush, new diary. So Nikki can spill about all of it. This is basically like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but a girl character. That is how it was described back in the day. That is what I'm going to be starting, rereading it for the first time ever. So when like, I think it was published in 09. Yeah, 09. So first time in like, what is that, 17 years. Also using this bookmark that my cousin got for me, which is so cute. It has all these different books on it. Lots of classics, it looks like. Yep, classics. So I am going to be using that as I read a classic from my childhood. Thursday, but not so happy. Yeah, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to get this to connect with that. It's not going in. Ugh. Yeah, I don't think I'm strong enough to get that. So that's not fun. Oh, yeah, we're all falling apart over here. I really need a chair right here. I really need a stool because I don't want something that takes up a lot of room because I don't have a lot of room to begin with, but we go over this every single week. But I am at the halfway point in Out There by Kate Folk, and yeah, I'm loving this. It's not like a full 5-star. It's like a 4.25. I usually don't do the decimals, but this year I have been, because it's Not a full 5-star, but it's better than a 4-star. So that's why I think it's going to be a 4.25. The story I read today was called The Bone Ward. In this story, we have this bone, like their bones turn to mush at night, and they all get sent to this ward that is like researching this disease and practicing trying to find a cure for that disease. And there's only one woman, but then eventually another woman gets brought in, and it's just how men view women. But something with Kate Folk's writing is that it might, these stories might just seem like, yeah, that's really weird, that's speculative, but there's such a deeper meaning to it. I really think of the substance. I think about the substance every day, if I'm being honest with y'all. That's the movie with Demi Moore. How it can just be a weird kind of story, but there's a deeper meaning to it. Main story out there, the title story has been my favorite so far. This is in a world of, you know, with online dating, but there is these kind of like hologram figures, but they're not holograms. Like they feel, you know, like a human, but they do eventually like disintegrate once they've done their job. So these beings were made to work like really hard jobs, jobs that are mentally hard for humans, like working in a nursing home, that kind of thing, just to be able to show empathy to the people in those situations. But eventually these people can't tell the difference if these are human or not, so start relationships with them, and obviously it doesn't really work out. A Russian company even gets rights to these blots, and they start to take people's like identity, you know, like they take their credit card numbers and all of that kind of thing. The Last Woman on Earth, pretty self-explanatory. Heart Seeks Brain, I think this one was pretty fun, and another one that is just really smart. That's what I was saying. These are really weird, but they're smart of how the deeper meaning. The Void Wife, I think is the one. There we have Earth. And on these two like latitudes or longitudes, I think it was latitudes. No, maybe it was longitudes. That they are either way, you know, coming and closing Earth up. So it's, what are you doing in that scenario? I'm being very vague because I want y'all to think for yourselves when you're reading this. The Head and the Floor, really weird. Tahoe, that one was the one with perspective of men, which is something that has been very different from the rest of the book. So I thought that was interesting. But yes, I am loving this and definitely am recommending it. And I cannot wait to read Sky Daddy by Kate Folk. I didn't realize that they were by the same author until I would, you know, log this on to Goodreads and was seeing her other work, because I was like, that name sounds so familiar. I might have said that in an earlier vlog, and sure enough, she's the one who wrote Sky Daddy, which that book is, I think that's so out there, and I'm really out there. I'm really intrigued to read that. I am gonna have to find out something for my seating in here. Guys, I literally read 224 pages in here today. At 84%, well, just so you know, this reads very fast, and I know some of y'all would probably read it in one sitting. I don't do that kind of thing. We're spreading this out between 3 days, so I do think I'll finish it tomorrow. We are going to go through my notes, though, for the first 84% of the book. First thing I noticed was the audiobook was saying things differently than were written in the book. The book says cell phone. The audiobook says iPhone. I thought that was interesting. Changed words, like it might say sucks on the audiobook and humiliating in the physical book. So I'm wondering, is this being dumbed down? And I think that's kind of a harsh way to say such a thing. So I went and looked. The audiobook was published in 2010. This book, the physical book of the original edition, first edition, when I read it, was published in 2009. This one, that is the super squee edition, was published in 2016. Kids today must be nicer than they were back in my day with how they talk. We were pretty mean to each other, but it was like in a loving way. Like, we weren't doing it to be mean to others, at least me and my friends. Don't know about other people. No, we had banter. I've noticed that, keeping on that trail, I'm assuming what is on the audiobook was what was in the original book in 2009. There's so many like pop culture references. High School Musical 3, Amy Winehouse, Tyra Banks. She loves Tyra Banks. Hannah Montana, the Jonas Brothers, Nick Jonas specifically. And then even things like Jimmy Choo, clothing brands, things. A Walmart got mentioned, when in this physical copy they don't have all of that. Like Guitar Hero was mentioned in here, they just changed it to like gamer, because the guy wanted a tattoo that said Guitar Hero, something like that, but in the physical book it said gamer for life. Now these only came out 6 years apart from each other, the audiobook and this physical copy, so I do think that's interesting. That did the world really change that much in 6 years? Were pop culture references really that big of a difference between 2009 and 2016? And yeah, I do think so. Social media happened, and I do think everybody's obsessed with 2016 right now. That is when the world really changed. Like 2012 was my like favorite year ever. A lot of people seem to like 2016 and I do think everything did change in 2016. Why all that is, I don't know. I mean, I do think the election had a big deal to do with it, but culture just shifted a lot during that time period. Yeah, and there was another thing with the like schoolwork. We have one scene where Nikki, the main character, she cheats on the test. She sees the girl next to her and she's like, oh, she's doing that answer, I'm gonna do that answer. They took that out of the physical book. And another thing is, she's like, if I don't study, I already have C's in this class, it's gonna be bad, like if I don't study. In this, they changed it to B's, so it's like they're making sure the kids are more like studious than they were back in my day. Making sure they are putting school first than they weren't doing back in 2009. I worded that really weird, I'm sorry. Now just some more other random things. That Nikki isn't that nice. She's very like judgmental. Is that a trend this week? But she is a 14-year-old girl. I don't remember that's how old. And yeah, it's an audiobook. I said 14 as well. So they're 14. I was 10 when I first read this. I do think this is perfect for tweens, for that middle grade age demographic. As it said, 9 to 13. It's perfect for them. They're gonna find this a lot of relatability. And again, as I said, some of it might just be like, oh, that's really judgmental or whatever. They're teenage girls. You are, when you're a teen, you're constantly comparing yourself to others, putting people against each other. That's just how it is. So when it's like this and this kind of book, I'm fine with that. But if it was in a book written for adults and adults acting like that, that's a whole different story. Another thing that I thought was interesting was rearranging a chapter. This is diary entry, so it is like by day. So like something could be like October 6th and then be October 8th on the audiobook. And in this instance, Nikki finds a hearing aid on the ground. What she thinks it is, and now I've realized, oh, kids in 2016 probably wouldn't have known what this is, that there were these like Bluetooth things that you could like answer calls on and all that. So that is what Nikki thought it was. And she goes and she paints it with spray paint. That ends up giving her a rash. She didn't know she was allergic to metallic spray paint. And she finds out that, oh, this is actually a hearing aid and it belongs to the old lady next door. It's the right thing and goes and returns it. But she does it anonymously because I don't think she wants to get into trouble. Puts the hearing aid back or gives it back. Is kind of taken out just that she finds the hearing aid. It doesn't really go into the Bluetooth thing and all. Whole Bluetooth plot line out of it. And instead she has a pimple on her face, and that is why she wants to skip school, because she doesn't want everybody to know she has a pimple. Some phrases that are repetitive, like she will say, I just said this in my head, rather than nobody heard me because I just said it in my head, or something like that. Oh my gosh, that's like every 25 pages she says that. And again, I get that, like we all go through that. Like I go through that quite a bit. I'm like, oh, probably shouldn't say that, so I'm gonna keep it in here, write it down later. And that's exactly what she's doing. But it does get repetitive just to read that over and over. And there was another one that was like, I'm not jealous, because that would be juvenile. That comes up quite frequently as well. So just some phrases being reused. I think a big theme here is popularity what it's made out to be? Is it worth it to be popular? And I think Nikki just wants to stick to being herself, but she does like the idea of everything that comes with popularity. But at the end of the day, she realizes, if I can't get that being myself, what's the point in having it? And I mean, I don't think I picked up on that theme as a kid. Those are all of my notes for the Dork Diaries. Again, I should be finishing it tomorrow, so I'm sorry that I don't have a review in this vlog, but you can check it out on all the bookish social medias, which are always linked down below. But let's do our weekly reading wrap up. I have finished 2 books this week, that being the Frozen River and The Sisters. So we finished 2 of those. I have read over 100 pages, and today I've read over 200 pages every day this week, so I am super proud of that. I'm looking at the calendar, so next week's vlog for our sneak peek is going to be the reset. We are going to be getting ready for a new month of reading that will be taking place in February, so getting my life in line for February. And that is the vlog. If you guys made it through this whole video, leave a snow emoji in the comments below, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!